Good morning and welcome to day 6 of our pilgrimage, where we will visit the Basilica of San Francesco. We begin with our pilgrim prayer. In the presence of the Sending Father, in the presence of the pilgrim Son, in the presence of the wind-like Spirit, in the presence of the Three, we are one. We place our souls and bodies under your guiding this day. O God, O Father of help to pilgrims, protector of heaven and earth. Amen. You may be wondering why we have gathered so early in the morning. To get the most out of our visit, it is best to go to the Basilica early, before the coaches arrive with people visiting for the day. We are standing by the Temple of Minerva. It is now a church, and you might like to visit it later on today.
So, we begin our walk down the Via San Francesco towards the Basilica. The view that greets us would have been a familiar sight to Francis, as many of the buildings date from his time. Look out for the building by the steep steps further on. It's a really new build, being built in 1477.
As we walk down the street, notice many frescoes on the buildings, similar to the one of the Madonna and Child shown here. There are other interesting features. No, we don't have to walk up these steps today. And on our left, the Oratory of the Pilgrims, built in the 15th century. It is a lovely place for quiet prayer.
Continuing on down the Via San Francesco, we catch our first sight of the Basilica. The cornerstone of this magnificent building was laid in 1228 by Pope Gregory IX and was officially dedicated to St. Francis by Pope Innocent IV in 1253.
As we enter the upper basilica, I will give you a moment to take in the sight before you. Every part of the walls and ceiling are covered in frescoes. As we are not allowed to talk or take photographs, you might want to pick up a leaflet. We make our way down the main aisle to the altar. Before us are amazing stained glass windows which date from 1235 to 1250 and were the first of their kind in Italy. Because of their age, it is difficult to make them out at a distance. As we make our way down the north aisle, there are two sets of frescoes. The upper ones depict scenes from the Old Testament books of Genesis and Exodus, and the lower ones scenes from the life of Francis. As we make our way towards the front door, on the left we see the miracle of the water, and on the right Francis preaching to the birds. We turn to make our way down the south aisle, where the life of Francis is continued, and above are scenes from the New Testament. If you are ready for coffee, we can recommend the cafe shop on the corner. They sell lovely cakes. We will see you again in the lower piazza of St. Francis in about half an hour.
We hope you enjoyed your coffee and cake. We enter the lower basilica through its imposing Gothic porch and find ourselves in a building with an almost jewel-like interior. The lower basilica is Romanesque in style and is darker and more enclosed, with lower ceilings and smaller windows than the Gothic architecture of the upper basilica. Above our heads, we see a fresco of Francis himself welcoming pilgrims, and looking directly ahead, we can see the Pilgrims' Chapel. Turning left, we enter the nave, and as we walk along, on the right, we find beautiful frescoes portraying scenes from the life of Christ, and on the left, in parallel, echoing scenes from the life of Francis, underscoring the saint's desire to imitate his Lord and Master in all that he did. Walking along the nave, we pass the steps leading down to Francis' tomb. We will return here as we end our day and pause for prayer. Under the crossing vault of the transept stands the high altar, and as we move closer, we can see above us the magnificent Giotto frescoes portraying the evangelical counsels, that is, the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Practically every wall space in this prayerful place has its graceful and colourful fresco, executed with masterful artistic creativity. Created for a culture more at home with images than writing, these magnificent works of art enchanted, taught, and inspired medieval pilgrims, as well as many modern-day ones, who have made their way to the tomb of the little poor man. It is here, in the lower basilica, that each evening the Pilgrim's Mass is celebrated, as hundreds of pilgrims from all around the world gather to join their voices with the saints and angels in praise and thanksgiving to our Creator God.
As we enter the tomb of St. Francis, let us pause for thought. It has to be said that the beauty and magnificence of this basilica would seem to be a stark contrast to the life chosen by Francis, the little poor man. Perhaps he would be embarrassed by it. But this church was built in gratitude and in praise to God for his faithful servant. In short, it is a gift of love. Another act of love happens each day as the friars of the community, together with pilgrims from around the world, come together in prayer in this place. Let us now join them.
Satisfy us in the morning with your amazing love. Satisfy us in the morning with your amazing love, so we may sing with gladness and joy all our days, all our days. Satisfy us in the morning with your amazing love. Satisfy us in the morning with your amazing love, so we may sing with gladness and joy all our days, all our days. Satisfy us in the morning with your amazing love. Satisfy us in the morning with your amazing love, so we may sing with gladness and joy all our days, all our days. Satisfy us in the morning with your amazing love. Satisfy us
Join us tomorrow for day 7 of our pilgrimage. We will be visiting San Stefano. Arrivederci.